Well, hey, Lady Boss, owner of The Right Place, Right Time, is coming back at you today. I want to talk about fears again. So, we've been doing a little video series here on YouTube about the fears that nearly stopped me from writing my memoir, Dear Universe, I Get It Now, Letters on the Art and Journey of Being Brave and Being Me. I've been diving in here talking about fear because fear is something that a lot of writers who either have never written a book before or who are writing a memoir or who are writing anything really, come to find that they cross paths with. None of us do anything without fear, right? It's those of us who decide to do it anyway that get something done because we put courage over fear. But none of us are fearless. Okay, let's talk about that. None of us are without fear, which is truly what fearless means. So whether we are brave in pursuing something or courageous in pursuing something, it does not mean that we are not scared shitless about what is about to happen. And for writers, especially writers of nonfiction and memoir, it's super easy to feel fear. You're about to put your life on the page. You're literally about to put your life on the line, the written line, a line that's going to be in copy after copy after copy and around for a really long time. So for me, I've had several fears that nearly prevented me from writing my memoir, and you can catch other videos, but this video is talking about the fear of being judged and the fear of being overlooked. Now, why would I be judged? Well, we're human, right? And so I can't go into the writing of my book without assuming that somebody who reads it might have some sort of judgment about something that happened to me, the way that I responded, the way that something else, happened after, the series of events, like who knows. Obviously, our hope would be that you're reaching the right people, right? And so the right people are not going to judge you, but we're human and your readers are human. So part of it was that fear of judgment from strangers. The other part was definitely fear of judgment from people that I knew, right? Which goes back to one of my other fears, which is writing it while people that I was going to write about were still alive, right? What were they going to think about what I wrote? Were they going to disagree? Were they going to get angry? Were they going to get upset? Were they going to disown me? Even though I knew that there wasn't anything super horrible in anything that I wrote, you still have that fear because you don't know how people are going to take it, right? So definitely a judgment from complete strangers about things that happened to me, judgment from people that I knew about things that happened to me, but then also judgment about the way that I wrote it, judgment that the writing wasn't strong enough, judgment that it wasn't a work of art, judgment that it, wasn't as compelling as the best-selling section at Barnes and Noble or whatever it was. A lot of judgment around how I was as a writer and not just how I am as a person that was coming to life on the page. So there was a period of time where I actually thought about writing underneath a pen name, a name that was not my own, so that I didn't have to necessarily worry as much about the judgment in these ways, because I was hiding behind a fictitious name. I ultimately decided that I didn't want to do that, that was actually worse to me than putting myself out there. It was actually pretty much antithetical to what I wanted for myself, which is to be authentic and to be brave and to be myself and to have my name published on something and to have a book, that was mine. And so ultimately I decided that I was going to fight the fear, work with the fear, and do it anyway and use my real name or a variation of it. But it was a really real and crippling thing. I was also worried about the fact that I would be judged and then also overlooked, because I'm somewhat young to be writing a memoir, or at least by most people's standards. I actually had one person say to me at one point that she didn't really think that I was old enough to have anything really to say, to, create a memoir out of, and this is exactly why we should not judge people based on their energy or the way that they look or the things that they've accomplished. Just because people look like they got their shit together does not mean that they haven't been through some horrific stuff, some stuff that books are made of, some stuff that memoirs are made of, because memoirs are not typically made out of the happy-go-lucky moments in our lives. Memoirs are typically from hardship and adversity and challenge and trauma and hurt and darkness and shadow and all kinds of other complicated things. So I was really worried that people were just going to be like, there's no possible way she's got anything important to say because she's young and therefore she hasn't lived, she hasn't experienced what could possibly have happened to her. And while that is an unfair assumption or accusation or whatever you want to say, it was a very real thing for me because people had actually said it to me, right? So I felt like the cards were stacked against me in terms of writing this book. I needed it to be polished. I needed it to be well written. I needed to have something valuable enough to say. And really, at the end of the day, when I could drown out all that noise, what it came down to for me is that it doesn't matter how old I am. It doesn't matter that I'm not an Elizabeth Gilbert or a Jeanette Walls or a Roxane Gay. I have a story to tell, and I'm allowed to tell it, regardless of whether or not my writing is like theirs, whether or not I'm as old as they are or as experienced, whether or not I reach bestseller status, whether or not my experiences are as horrific as somebody else's. That does not matter. What matters is that I have a story. I'm allowed to tell that story. My story is mine, and it's okay to share it in powerful ways, even if the story isn't perfect, even if the story doesn't reach the top charts, even if the story isn't as perfect as somebody else's story, even if my story is similar to someone else's. It's not theirs. This is mine. This is mine. And so if you take away anything from this video, I want you to know that regardless of your age, regardless of your writing prowess in comparison to big names and best-selling writers, you have a story that you are allowed and permitted to share if you are so compelled, if you feel so strongly about sharing it, that you are going to dig your heels in and you are going to put in heart and soul and effort into your book, then you should write it. And don't let anything slow you down. Stick fear in the back seat. Let it come along for the ride, but don't let it drive the car. All right, and if you need support, if you need to figure out how to gain that confidence so you can overcome the fear or at least learn to work with it, then please, 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 please come visit my site. Schedule a 30-minute free coffee and craft call with me. I would love to talk to you about how to face fear and write your book anyway.